What's going on, guys? I'm Tyler, and in continuing my series of 2D DreamWorks reviews, I'm here to let you know that the road to El Dorado is no perfect movie, and it follows Kevin Kline and Kenneth Branagh as a pair of con artists who discover a map that allegedly leads to El Dorado, the long-lost city of gold. But once they get there, they are immediately mistaken for gods by the El Dorado citizens, and in order to make off with all the gold they can without being discovered, the one citizen who knows for a fact that they're lying, played by Rosie Perez, offers to coach them on how to be gods so that once they're done with the scheme, they'll hopefully take her back to Spain along with it. And I was cautiously looking forward to this movie. I had heard mixed things about it. I had heard just how much money it lost at the box office. It wasn't really the greatest thing to start off with, but close people that I know on social media really love this movie. They think it's one of the most underrated animated movies. They love how it's more of a buddy comedy with risque humor as opposed to a straightforward action adventure for all ages, which, I got no problem with. And I'm happy to say that the road to El Dorado was a genuine surprise. And one of the biggest surprises was Kevin Kline and Kenneth Branagh as a comedic duo. They have really fast paced timing and chemistry with each other. And what was interesting was I was expecting Branagh to be the leader and Kline to be the sidekick, but it's actually the other way around. And that's what makes it much more refreshing to watch on screen and a little sharper written, too, because Kline is the type of self appointed leader who thinks he's a brilliant strategist, but once he gets to step one, he can't think of step two and immediately begins to keep obsessing over step one, hoping that an idea will come up in his head. But instead, he gets a lot more nervous, more paranoid, less self esteem. Whereas Branagh is much more relaxed and free spirited. He believes in fate and improvisation in order to advance his own cons, and surprisingly, that's actually what leads the two of them closer on their journey. And that's the overall theme of the movie and the source of the tension between the two of them as friends. Once they get to El Dorado, Klein immediately wants to take the gold and get out as quickly as possible, the original plan. But Branagh becomes so fascinated and enamored by this city who treats him with much more respect than his own best friend that it becomes tougher for him to decide whether or not he should be blindly loyal to the only friend in his life or keep on making his own choices, keep on letting life decide what to do next for himself, because it's a philosophy that keeps leading him closer and closer to a much more interesting and exciting lifestyle. And that's a really interesting message for kids' movies to teach because I'm not really the biggest fan of letting improvisation and letting fate really dictate your life. I'm a big fan of strategy and routine. You have no idea how many times I've tried to make this exact video just based on instinct and improvisation. I've tried like 6 or 7 times and I keep fucking up regardless. But you know what? At the same time, watching this movie made me think about the message and it made me want to try something a little bit different. And with all the videos that I'm doing with my buddy Josh right now, I'm starting to believe more and more that I can actually pull this off. And the villains themselves also have this exact same problem. This high priest of El Dorado who believes that human sacrifices is what makes the gods bless them because of how sinful and unpredictable and imperfect human beings are. And whenever anyone challenges him with different beliefs, it only makes him try harder to reinforce his own strict routines and schedules and philosophies, and that's exactly what leads to his eventual downfall. More and more as I think about it, this movie itself is a little more against religion in regards to following the exact same belief system for hundreds and hundreds of years and being so resistant to change. This is a surprisingly beautiful looking movie too. I didn't really hear that many things about the animation itself going into this movie, but it is bright, it is beautiful, it is colorful, it is really creative. It feels realistic in regards to the designs of the citizens of El Dorado and these Incan and Aztec buildings and architecture and geography. All of these really creative animals that they come across once they're in El Dorado are so bright and colorful in a surreal way that sometimes during the musical sequences especially, it makes it feel like you're watching a very probably the best fever dream that you'll ever have. And I said in my Sinbad review, I didn't really like how characters spent so much talking and less time soaking in the moment to make the movie feel magical. This movie takes a ton of times just to soak in how beautiful the city is, to focus on how beautiful the culture is. There are so many montages where Branagh takes a tour on the city, introduces himself to the people, and the people who still think he's a god think he's much more lenient and compassionate than they were expecting. And it leads to some heartfelt moments that are told purely through the expressions and through the body language and through the really fast-paced movement of these characters, which is really all I can ask for with an animated movie like this. Now, in regards to problems, I thought this was going to be an issue, and it kind of was. The songs in this movie. It takes the Tarzan, Brother Bear, and Spirit approach of having a narrator tell the songs through the montages, and what makes it feel more like a Disney knockoff than Spirit did was the fact that the songs are written by Elton John and Tim Rice, and Elton John is the one singing as the narrator. Now, the fact that Elton John and Tim Rice wrote the songs for Lion King is enough for anyone to associate it with Disney, even though that may not even be what the producers were going for. But just those behind-the-scenes features makes me realize why 2D DreamWorks movies probably didn't do so well at the box office. It wasn't because they were bad. It's because Jeff Katzenberg, head of DreamWorks and former head at Disney, was really just living under Disney's shadow as he was creating these movies. Because really think about it, Prince of Egypt having a reluctant hero who goes back to his hometown to take his rightful place in terms of musicals, that's Lion King. Spirit, as I said in my video, kind of had that Tarzan feel where it's the one singer singing these songs that narrate explicitly what we're already watching on screen, and this movie kind of had that feeling, but the songs themselves focused on what characters were going through as opposed to what was actually happening on screen, and I kind of respect those songs a little more for that, but at the same time, as good of a singer as Elton John is, and as good of a writer as he is, I don't really remember these songs. The only one I can kind of remember off the top of my head is It's Tough to Be a God, but I remember the sequence itself for being so surreal with the visuals and the colors, and the title, It's Tough to Be a God, because it is a decent title, as opposed to the actual lyrics. They're not the best songs that Elton John and Tim Rice have done together, but honestly, I've heard them do worse. And in terms of characters, I was looking forward to seeing Rosie Perez the most because I'm a big fan of hers. And I like the whole idea of her coaching these two on how to be gods, teaching them about their spiritual and cultural beliefs, hopefully getting them more interested in the setting that they're in, hopefully getting them to stay longer, and making some comedic scenarios where they're about to get something right and then they just fuck it up. And there are moments like that, but they're not as funny as the bits where it's just the two of them arguing over what's the better way to con someone by having a strict routine or by letting fate and luck dictate their choices. And Perez herself as a character doesn't really get to do that much. At the beginning, she's very sly and sneaky, more so than the two professional con artists, where she's like, hey guys, I know exactly who you are, see you at the execution. And they're just like, wait, what exactly is it that you want? And once you find out what this villain has in store for El Dorado, it does make sense why she wants to run away with them in the first place. But then things start to get romantic between one of them that leads to a really risky bedroom joke that I appreciate just for taking a chance on that. But in terms of romance, I don't really know what it is that the two of them see in each other, and it's kind of where her character development stops. And the third act itself is very anticlimactic, especially with how they wrap up the villain, because Armand Assante does really good work as this villain. You genuinely believe that even though he is really sadistic and over the top, he believes that human sacrifice is the best way to go about things from a spiritual level. But the way he's defeated in the end felt really rushed and forced. It felt more of a story-based decision as opposed to a more entertaining decision. I know a lot of people, whenever something short happens in a climax, it's just like, well, it makes more sense for the characters. Okay, fine, but it still needs to be entertaining. You could spend a couple more minutes having, like, an extra fight or an extra long chase in order to raise up the stakes and tension. It's not that there weren't any stakes or tension in the finale, because without spoiling anything, these characters really do have to make some sacrifices, and without spoiling what those sacrifices are, you genuinely believe that they're content with it. But other than that, it just the movie kind of fizzles out and it just ends. It's the kind of ending that is just like, well, there could be sequels, there could be multiple adventures, but it's not set up very well. But that's about it. The Road to El Dorado was a genuine surprise. It was funny. Kevin Kline and Kenneth Branagh had really good chemistry with each other. Rosie Perez, in the couple scenes that she has that were effective, was very cunning and sly, but in a funny and charming way. The animation is really beautiful, and even though the songs are nothing memorable, they're fine. All in all, Road to El Dorado is a unique kids movie that you don't get very often, and for all those reasons, I'm going to give The Road to El Dorado a 4 out of 5. Guys, thanks as always for watching. If you have seen El Dorado, let me know in the comments below what you thought of it. Also, let me know how many shots you took every time I said El Dorado, because I'm getting pretty close myself. Oh. Anyways, be sure to stay tuned for more reviews, including the finale of my DreamWorks reviews, The Prince of Egypt, and be sure to like and subscribe. Take care.